completely unique. And it starts to be very interesting because you realize that you don't have to change other people. Like you are in your growth path, they're in their growth path. We're in different spots on that path in different areas of our life. We all have different strengths and different weaknesses, and we can start to discover and learn more from other people without feeling like we need to change them and convince them to come around to our worldview. Because ours fits together in a way that is whole and comprehensive for us, and we don't need to be in conflict about it.
And when you learn new stuff, you don't have to, well, I can't talk to this person, he's not intricately informed or whatever. It's like you learn what they have, and then you can put it in to, replace some old information that is better in addition to. And in the first book of, chapter of my book, I talk about how this model is evolutionary, and that this is meant to be the first word in integral recovery, not the last word. Not some kind of sacred solid text that can never change. It's meant to evolve and change and progress and become more beautiful and deeper and more skillful as you use it.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about it is it's a meta framework. It's a map. It's a map. So if we draw a map of the United States, then you got the borders and the boundaries, but there's a lot going on in there, and you can go, oh, there's Denver there. I didn't know that before. And you can update the map continuously as you have more information for it, because the framework still holds it.
Yeah, so, and it's in a multi-dimensional map too. So it's more than just a flat space. It's like,
it's really, really comprehensive. So once you start to learn stuff, then you can continue to fill it out and flesh it out. And then it applies to different areas. I mean, so many different things like recovery. I mean, there's so much yet that has not yet been identified with recovery with the integral model that there are spaces for that we know of with the integral model. Or education or healthcare or economics. There's so much room to fill it out and understand it more deeply. So for the sake of time, I just want to keep going with
Sure, you roll on.
Yeah. So the next one is, so we said levels, lines, states, and there's types, and types are, pretty straightforward. Personality types. There are different types. There are different plant types. There are different personality types. There are different types. There are different body types. And this is just one of those things that is a constant in reality. And there is some research and some understanding on these types. Like there are mesomorphic, endomorphic, and exomorphic bodies. These are three different body types that people tend to have, and they're pretty constant. There are different personality types, and there's a book called Personality, written by a researcher that I've identified what the core, like scientifically validated personality types are. So in these other dimensions, regardless of your level of development, regardless of your lines of capacity development, regardless of the states of consciousness that you navigate to and live in constantly, if you have the exact same dimensions as another person in all of those areas, if you're different personality types, if you're different sexual orientations, if you're different gender types, if you're different
masculine, feminine,
if you're different types, you all of those things will be different. They'll be all changed by your type. So Ken covers some typologies in the course and explains this much more deeply. And then there are, there's whole fields of stuff on this. For people who are into astrology, there's astrological types. There's the Enneagram with more personality types. So it just goes deeper and deeper. And this is one part of the map that is significant for understanding ourselves
and others,
and understanding others. One of the things is like personality types is another area where we have unnecessary conflict, or because we are in the world in a different way than somebody else, and we're trying to get them to be like us, but they never will, and we'll never be like them because we're different personality types. And really, when we start to figure out how to synergize our types instead of change other people's types, we can accomplish a lot more. Somebody who tends to be visionary and creative could really use somebody who's really practical and grounded as a type. And those two types can really work together if they stop trying to make them like each other. So that's one other aspect that Ken covers in the course.
And we've used the Enneagram for many, many years, and there's levels and levels and levels. There's just the kind of the really first level of egoic, personality types, and it gets very deep and becomes actually a spiritual, another technology to use. But yeah, it just helps you to understand, like Donald Trump, what the hell's going on with him? Well, he's an 8 on the Enneagram, and once you understand 8, of course, he's acting like an 8. It's what he does. Christie too, by the way, Governor Christie from New Jersey. But so you kind of understand these guys, and it helps you just grok and understand at a deeper level what's going on.
Yeah, and it also expands your ability to have compassion for people when you start to recognize that they're in a tendency that's associated with that type, instead of there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, and and when we were doing treatment, in our little house here, and later our guest house that we built, when people would come in, just getting off drugs and stuff, they were when you're really unhealthy, your type is really in your face. The more evolved you get, it becomes harder to type somebody on the spot, because you begin to take on healthy aspects of all the different types, and you become a more integrated personality of that. But when you're just coming off of 4 grams of heroin a day and a couple of bottles of vodka and a handful of pills and smoking cigarettes, like whatever you are is right there. And so traditionally in the Enneagram, you'd let people discover their own, but I just found, just cut to the chase. Okay, read chapter 4, read this, read that, and it would make a lot of the unconscious patterns become conscious. Mm-hmm. And so you when that happens, you become more choiceful and more understanding, and there's more, you don't have to fall into the same old unconscious patterns, which in the case of addiction will lead you to relapse and often death. So it's important to learn that stuff, and it becomes a very valuable tool, being a leader, working in an organization and working with people and making sure their needs are being met and they're being used to their optimal capacities. Yeah,
it's huge. And really, as a leader, this is a significant one to understand in leadership, because being able to be conscious of and work with different types is required in any context where you're having more than just you as the only person. So if you're trying to lead multiple people, being able to relate properly with the right types and the way to be able to achieve what you're trying to accomplish is very significant capacity. In fact, there are presenters who do entire courses on just this one subject. So this is one significant thing. And really, when you get it the way that Ken presents it, it does shift the way that we interact with the world significantly. This is one area for me that has also really made my relationship with my dad much more nourishing and rewarding than it was before I knew Integral. So it's been a huge upgrade for my life.
Yeah, big time in these essential, relationships. And I forget the name of the author, but he said there's like maybe 5, 6, or 7 relationships in one's life that you got to get right. And it's going to have a big, big bearing on your happiness. And if you have a successful life, and parents, children, significant others, spouse, siblings, and stuff like this, or best friends, however that works out. So to know that stuff can preserve relationships, and you can make allowance, and you can understand, and you begin to understand that what works for you doesn't necessarily work for your dad, because you're very different. And so instead of trying to pose your cookie cutter thing, I figured it out, right? What you're supposed to do, it's like, no, it just, we're more diverse. And it really helps. One time I was in an airport and I had some time, and I started just seeing if I could come up with theories about or informed guesses about what types I was watching. And it was pretty interesting. I think I was getting pretty accurate. I could go into a whole trip about this, but I'll spare you. But you could just watch the way people were dressing, where they were reacting, Anyway, I'm getting a lot of
it's fun
pictures of it right now.
And that's actually, I mean, that's just one example of how it starts to change the way that you interact with the world.
Yeah.
So it really is an upgrade to our operating system when we start to grok this stuff. And so I think with that, we can go into dimensions, which really, I want to say it briefly, but this is Ken's development. It's like game changing and mind expanding when people really get it. And so I really want to say, like, I can say something about this, but really, if you are at all feeling any attraction to this, you should learn this from Ken. So, but quadrants, and I think you may have something to say about it too, John.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've often thought if Ken, all the other stuff, the lines, the level, the states, all that stuff wasn't there. It was just the quadrants. That's enough to justify, Ken's, life. It's just such a powerful lens to look at reality to. And It's been made all the difference in recovery and in my life. And they all have to be covered. And if you're going to have anything that's going to stick as a solution, it's going to have to include all four quadrants. Because if not, the whole thing will be unstable. And anything, I got this from Marco Morelli, a friend of ours, when he was working with me in the early days of integral recovery. He said, any positive thing you do in any of these quadrants is going to help and lift up the other quadrants, dimensions. Anything negative you do, of course, is going to affect the other ones. I mean, they're not reducible, but they're all connected.
They're all correlate. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you ignore either one of them, you just don't get it. It's just like, it's problematic.
Yeah. So the essence of it is kind of always, no matter what, ever since the dawn of existence, there are four fundamental dimensions to reality. There is two interior dimensions and two exterior dimensions, and that there are interior individual and interior plural, and exterior individual and external plural. And if you don't know what I'm saying, that's okay. Ken does a much better job of explaining it. But basically, to briefly just say it, and it's much better explained by Ken. But it's systems, culture, like scientific, objective, the external reality of something, what's physically going on, and the interior, which mind, emotions, individuality, the experiential realm. So those are the four dimensions. And again, I am not the teacher of this. Ken is the teacher of this, but you should really learn it from him. But one of the significant things is, as John was just saying, if you make a change in one of these areas, it affects all of these areas. So for example, with any one of these spiritual technologies like iAwake, binaural beat technology, you make a change in the exterior individual dimension. Like I sit in a room, I put on headphones. That is an exterior change. I just changed that I have headphones on and I put an audio track on. I just changed something in the exterior dimension. But what really quickly happens as a result of making that exterior change and playing those exterior audio tracks is an interior change happens for me. I become having a different experience, having different emotions. I'm having it in a different state of consciousness. I'm operating from a different dimension of myself. And then that changes the way that I interact with other people in a plural dimension. So the way that I interact with my business partner, with the people that I work with my spouse, with my dad, the entire culture that I participate in changes. And the more of us that do that, the more it changes social systems, the way that we organize. But that anything can be said of anything. If we change the way that a system is done, if you do that in a classroom full of children, that's a systemic change. If you tell 20 kids before class starts, everybody's going to listen to a meditation track, that's a systemic change that's happening. We're changing the way a collective does something in the exterior realm that is observable by other people. that changes the culture of the classroom. It changes the state experience of every one of the kids, and it changes the brain chemistry, the developmental process of all of them. So making a change in any one of these dimensions affects all the rest. And when we really start to understand what these dimensions are, as Ken explains them, and how we can affect them, then we can really have a lot of power and control over what we're creating for ourselves and what we're creating in the world. And it's extremely, extremely powerful. And Ken is really the person to teach it. But another important thing is, even without all those things, that is significant information to know. If we do something to change our brain, it'll change our experience. Or if we do something actually to change our state, like it will change our physiology, it'll change the science. So when somebody says something like, prayer isn't real because you can observe it in the brain, actually what all they're saying is, when you do something to change your state of consciousness, it has a correlate effect in the brain. And that's the really significant insight into this. But what's really, really additionally powerful about it is that all of the other 4 frameworks that we just talked about, each exist in each of the 4 dimensions. So there are levels, lines, states, and types in the interior dimension. There are levels, lines, states, and types in the exterior dimensions. There are levels, lines, states, and types in
the cultural dimension, the we space.
In the we space and the cultural dimension. And then I, we, and it, and its are the other 4 terms that are used. So the I is the experience of what I'm experiencing. We is what we are experiencing. That's the interior dimensions. It is what an individual, observable artifact or reality is that anybody objectively can observe. And then it is a combination of those, a collective. So it's systems, an ecosystem is an it's. A social system, an education system, an economic system, a political system. These are all systems that organize observable reality in different ways. So countries are different. They have different social systems, different economic systems, and they also have different cultures, different interiors. And there are levels, lines, states, and types in all of those. So
and I had breakfast the other day with Michael Dowd, a good friend of mine who wrote the book Thank God for Evolution. He's a former evangelical preacher who is now working with environmentalism and trying to get us to wake up to how we're affecting the planet with all our pollution and global warming, etc. But he does it from the language of a preacher, so he can go into churches and talk to them in their language and get people to really buy in. Hey, we got to do something about that. We got to do something about reality now and how we're affecting the planet. And so we were sharing, this is what I'm working on. And it's very clear that my specialties is the upper right, the individual physical objective body, exercise, nutrition, meditation, blah, blah. And the upper left, the interior life, the spiritual life, emotional, PTSD, all that. That's really where I focus on my books. And of course, I'm aware of the other when I touch on it. His, on the other hand, he deals with the big cultural lower left, the we space, our beliefs about reality and environment and the world and how we should interact with it. And then the big structural things like carbon fuels and how we produce our stuff. So he's a lower left and right, and I'm an upper left and right guy. And integral consciousness informs me. It's like, that's my specialty. However, I'm not complete without people that are doing the work in the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And usually we have maybe 1 or 2 dimensions where we really focus on. But if without integral or understanding, we'll just say, that's all that matters. If I could just get somebody to work with their emotions and everything and blah, blah, everything will be okay. No, they'll still be unhealthy and eating crappy food and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I think one of the things about quadrants that I just want to point out is that sometimes people start to say, this seems a little lofty. I don't understand why this is important or why it's significant. It seems a little academic, but it can be for the people who want to go down that path. But really, in terms of a practical sense, really learning how to, one, understand these things is really useful because it allows us to have some freedom and flexibility, again, in consciously choosing how we grow. So if we're trying to work on a certain dimension change in our life, there are 4 dimensions to every single aspect of our life. I have started becoming much more interested in developing capacities with music. So that means that I need to, 1, develop an understanding and a relationship with music myself. That's my interior, my I dimension. It would be helpful if I understood the structure and the science of music, how music theory works, how an instrument works, all of those elements of the thing. And if I develop muscle memory and I do the physical practices associated with it, with playing a guitar or something like that, then if I participate in a community of other people who are interested in music and developing music, that's going to increase my capacity to develop in it quickly, because I'm going to learn from them. I'm going to be inspired by them. I'm going to connect with them on that. I'm going to have people to practice with and people to relate with on the subject. And it is actually going to accelerate my capacity than if I'm just focusing on the one dimension. And if I participate in any sort of organized system, it's going to increase it. So if I participate in a band or a music or a singing group or anything like that, and I'm engaged in actually a system of music, then addressing it from 4 dimensions is going to accelerate my development through the process significantly more than if I go with 1 dimension, which again, with like similar to intelligences or states, we have a tendency to, as you said, to go to a primary one. So we actually have a self-diagnostic tool, the spectrograph in Superhuman OS, and we start to recognize that people always have a primary orientation. So my primary orientation is the I dimension, the upper left. I'm always trying to figure out what I feel, think, and understand about things. And then they have a secondary dimension. So my secondary dimension is the we space. I'm interested in how we relate as a culture, a collective, a community. So I tend to hang on those. Your primary, John, is probably the it space and then the I space.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a primary and a secondary, and then we also have strengths in each of these areas. So I'm really strong with practices that build connection and rapport with people, but I'm really weak with specific physical practices, so to speak, or something like that. Or if I'm wanting to learn about music, I may be really strong with developing an understanding of music, an understanding of music theory and a relationship with music, but I may be very poor in the upper right dimension of actually practicing the instrument.
That's right.
So each of these are essential, and we all tend to have areas where we're strong, we're weak, and which we prioritize. And really understanding that about ourselves is really important. And then also understanding that about any system that we participate in, because if I may go to a school or I may participate in a singing group that prioritizes one and neglects the other 3. So having this as a diagnostic tool for ourselves really, just like the other 5, empowers us to consciously choose how we want to grow. John, as you said, John, in the first book about integral recovery, that this is evolutionary. It's about how we grow, and it also gives us the tools to consciously choose how we grow. So it puts everything in a growth context. You are not a fixed person who cannot evolve, who cannot change. You are a flexible, changeable, evolving person that can grow into what you want to become. And you can choose your growth path by identifying the strengths and weaknesses that you currently have and that you will need in order to grow into the thing that you want to become, so that you can start doing practices associated with addressing those specific areas.
Yeah, and there's almost an evolutionary moral imperative. And I've been quoting this quote from Maslow a lot lately: what you can become, you must become.
Yeah.
You know, and you realize that the potential that you have is like, man, get off your butt and get into the evolutionary river and start doing the practice and developing yourself so you can show up in the best possible way for the time that you're embodied in right now, in this flow and these challenges that we're living right now. And it's just not, you know, it's like it makes it a little more serious. You have to kind of get that warrior ethos and say, you know, I'm doing this. I'm changing. I'm evolving myself because it matters. And then, again, Maslow said, change yourself is to change the world, because, you know, my work on myself is going to influence everything, you know, and chaos theory shows us that maybe just one little rinky-dink thing on the periphery can change the whole pattern of something in a really positive way to kick it to the next level. So you never know, you know, what you can accomplish in the big picture.
And that's part of the reason why we refer to it as a superhuman operating system, because really these tools are self-actualization tools. They are self-actualization frameworks. And when we say mental models and mental frameworks, the alphabet and numbers and letters, those to people who didn't know them seem like magical powers for people who do. It's like a huge, huge shift. What you're being able to look at a piece of paper and translate those symbols into meaning. How are you able to, you know, participate in that? I mean, like, accomplish such sorcery, but it's actually not that complicated once you have installed the mental model. And really the process of self-actualization, the process of growth, isn't a mystery anymore when you install the Superhuman Operating System. It's very clear what is going on and what you need to be doing in order to be self-actualizing. So then you just actually do it. Then you just are on that path of evolution, and you design your growth trajectory and you participate in it. And then you are in a journey of self-actualization. So for anybody actually who has the impulse towards self-actualization, I don't think that there is a better tool or a more significant tool than what Ken has created. And I think that's the kind of messages that we get from the graduates from the course all the time. People saying, like, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life, aside from becoming a mom and getting married, which is huge, you know?
Yeah. And no telling what the effects, the ripple effects from the work that you're doing with Superhuman Operating System is going to be on the world. You just don't know. It's fantastic. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's really exciting. And I do know, I mean, having been participating in this community for a long time, I've met people like you, John, who are making changes in the world of recovery, and there are people in Canada who have done significant work to protect the boreal forest from deforestation through using the integral model to build bridges between people that used to be in conflict. There are people who are doing it to protect indigenous communities. It is revolutionizing healthcare. I mean, what people are applying this to is a broad array. I mean, any subjects can be kind of made more integral. So whatever watching this video, whatever you currently do, there is an application for this in your world, and it may be you that develops the new application. I mean, there's two coaches that are life coaches, but when they applied this to the field of coaching, they developed one of the most advanced and powerful coaching methods there is that affects real and lasting results. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And coaching is a good thing. You can make progress so much faster when you have some expert that helps you realize your own capacities. And I was thinking about 5.5 years ago, I started playing electric blues guitar, And, there's the upper right, there's just the physical muscle memory, learning the scales, learning the neck, doing all that stuff. And then there's upper left. I mean, blues is a completely emotional art form. You're singing the blues. It's a shadow practice. It's music that makes you feel good about feeling really bad. It's like, and so if you're like, you're cut off from your emotions, you're dissociated. How the hell are you going to play the blues? You're not, so you have to have access to be able to go into those flows and express the music through all the technical stuff you've learned. And then in the lower left, or the we space, I mean, this stuff came over in slave ships from Africa. There's a whole culture context. It was a black art form. Then it went to England, and it became a white thing. And they took everything that the American blacks were doing here that white people in the U.S. couldn't appreciate, brought it back to the U.S. in a musical revolution, reinterpreted black music in a new form. And it's just this understanding and knowing the masters of all the different genre totally informs and gives you a broader place. You can play as part of a tradition, a flowing, growing body that's been just evolving for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then in the lower right, you got to learn about amplifiers and guitars and strings and tones and things I never thought about, So it's like, and by paying attention to all of that, I become hopefully an integral blues player, and my progress is much faster and I'm much better, and I'm able to bring it all together in something that really matters in a powerful way, a really communicative tool of music that I love, and a lot of people seem to like too. So.
Yeah, that's so awesome, John. That's really cool. That's such an awesome example of how this operating system really becomes something that is empowering and accelerating a self-actualization process, which is what it does for everybody in all of our own different ways.
And because of my integral practice, I learned that I have to work really, really freaking hard to get good at anything. And I realized that I have to start off, I'm going to be a dummy. And when I pick up that electric guitar, I mean, I bought this really good old Telecaster vintage guitar, pretty expensive. And I played it for several months without an amp, just starting to learn scale before I even had the guts to plug it into something that would make it loud enough. And now Pam can tell you I do amplify when I practice.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the amazingly freeing things about it, is that we don't have to if we start something and we're bad at it, it doesn't mean that we are flawed, broken, or incapable of doing it. It just means you are at the beginning of the developmental process. Yeah. So that's really freeing, because a lot of people, they feel limited. Like, I've always been like me. When I was a kid, somebody told me I couldn't sing and that I didn't have musical skills. And I took that on as an identity of, I am not a musical person. Other people are blessed and fortunate to be musical people. I'm not one of those. And I formed a whole identity around it. And one of the amazing things about this new way of participating in life is that I don't view myself in that way. I just view myself as on a developmental path, and I have more growth and development to do in my musical capacities. And as a result of that, for the past 10 years, I've been practicing singing, and now I think I'm kind of okay at it. So I'm growing.
Hey man, you got to come and visit us, and we can do some music together. That would be awesome.
Oh yeah, that would sound great. We did that last time we were there. We sang together.
Yeah. It's about time. We've both been working on it for a while, so hopefully we're a little better than we were.
Yeah.
Hey, this has just been terrific, and it's a vast field. And Sean Hargens, one time, another integral friend of ours, said that this superhuman operating system, it takes X amount of time to learn, because as you can see, the more you look at it, the more it continues to inform you. Mm-hmm. It's deeper and deeper, and new connections, and it's ongoing. It's infinite, really, and it's capacity to take you into depth and new understandings into patterns and how everything fits together and works. So, I hope people will take away just a taste of what this is and sign up for the Superhuman Operating System, which will be an ongoing there'll be classes offered several times a year, or how does that work, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anybody goes to superhumanos.net at any time, they will see when our upcoming training is happening. And if there's not an upcoming training, we do have the complete digital product available for anybody that's interested. And yeah, I would say for anybody that is interested in spiritual technologies, that's interested in self-transformation and actualization, I strongly recommend that you learn Ken's work. So Superhuman OS, we've designed it structurally in a certain way, so it breaks down the information in a certain order and presents you the essentials. But by whatever means necessary, I strongly recommend that you check out Ken. Marianne Williamson called him the teacher of teachers because his work really is kind of that significant. And the amount of people that have been huge in supporting Superhuman OS are a lot because of Ken's impact on people's lives. So, and I just want to, again, just express my own personal gratitude to Ken for developing this, and getting it out there. And I'm deeply honored to be able to be part of the process.
Yeah. And I know you guys just worked your butts off. It was not an easy thing. You spent hundreds of hours with Ken and putting it together, and the whole thing is just, and other people had tried similar things, but had never quite gotten it all connected the way you guys have. And, there were some prototypes that didn't quite work, and you guys finally built a model that is up and running and, blazing the way through the world.
It was a lot of work, and it was a work of passion. So it was really extremely rewarding. It felt really good to do it. And this is something I've always wanted to share with my brothers. So that is what I brought into this course. It was built for my siblings. So it structurally has, I've done everything I can, and my business partner has done everything I can. And if we have more time, I'd talk about online education, but we have designed it with the effort of actually getting people to understand, and specifically apply the integral model as a developmental tool for their lives. Because there's a difference between just getting it cognitively and actually living it. And one of the things that we kind of went into with this training as a personal goal is often the people say that in the online education industry, that only 10% of people who sign up for courses finish them. And they kind of accept that as a reality. And that is something that I was never a big fan of, because I don't think that has to be the case. I don't think it's a failing of the participants that only 10% complete online trainings. I think that there could be something that improved that. And, as a millennial who's played a lot of video games, I know that those same numbers don't apply to video games. People buy video games and they finish them. So we kind of really designed Superhuman OS as a tool to get as many people to graduate as possible. And when we did the first live launch of it and we were collecting our metrics on it, we had 85% of people participate through the entire 10-week course. So that's a huge part of the way it was designed, and I think that affected what the ultimate product would be. So if you want the most direct and essential and kind of easy, accessible way of learning Ken's work, I don't think there's another way to do it than Superhuman.
No, this is definitely the place to start. Tremendous. Hey, Ryan, brother, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, really, I've been inspired by it, and I hope everybody else who's listening to this is. And you're just doing such good stuff, and I've seen you just grow into this over a decade. So it's been really great.
Thank you. Yeah, and this conversation has really made me feel how rewarding it is to be in the position I am and able to work with Ken in the way that we are. It's super awesome. And I just want to say, while I'm on the call, I want to acknowledge Leif and Todd, because this just simply would not exist without my two partners on the project. Leif is kind of the amazing titan who created the really awesome learning platform, and Todd is the person who actually sat down and interviewed Ken and himself, who was new to integral theory, newer than I was. I've been in it for 12 years now. So to avoid it getting too geeky, Todd brought a beginner's mind to the entire process.
That's brilliant.
Which made it very accessible. So yeah, so thanks to them, and thanks to you, John, very much. And I'm really, it's awesome to be a part of the Spiritual Technologies 2.0, and it's amazing what you guys are doing. I'm a huge fan, as you know. I mean, we've shared iAwake stuff with our audience a lot, and I practice it every day myself. So
terrific. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.